I assume if you're watching this video today, you like to win softball games. What my experience has taught me over the years is that to win softball games, you have to improve skills. That's a pretty easy thing to remember, of course. And I think the thing that we have to keep in mind is that one of those skills that's very, very important is the ability to throw. If you watch a lot of softball games, you'll find out that probably across the whole scale of the game, more games are lost than won. And one of the reasons a lot of games are lost are bad throws. Now, it could be inaccurate throws, it could be throws to the wrong base, throwing when you shouldn't throw, all of those kind of things. But throwing is a big part of the game. So what we're going to explore today are the basic and advanced parts of throwing. We'll start with some of the simple things maybe, but we'll get into some advanced things and we'll throw out some drills that you probably never have seen before, and we'll go through the whole gamut of just about every way you can throw to help win a softball game. Before we get into that, however, I want to establish a philosophical foundation. Too often in skill development, we look at the physical parts of the skill. We do it in hitting, we do it in pitching, we do it in fielding, we do it in running, we do it in throwing. We've got to get some philosophical issues out of the way first. If we don't know why we do things, then it's very difficult to teach how to do those things. It's been said that throwing is a part of defense and an integral part of defense. That's certainly true. Catching is an important and integral part of defense. Again, today we're going to focus on throwing. Catching is a part of throwing, and during this video at certain times we'll insert how can you catch in a way that will help you to throw. People often say that defense is a game of throw and catch. That to play softball well on defense, you just have to be able to throw and catch. It's actually more than that, and we'll get into that as we go along. Now, if you set a bunch of players around and you ask them, are you able to throw and catch, they'll all raise their hands. It doesn't matter if they're 6 years old or 26 years old, their answer will be yes. But the evidence doesn't prove that. If it was a trial, they'd be found not guilty of being able to throw and catch. Just watch a regular team warm up before a practice or before a game, when they're just warming up their arms, and watch how many bad throws are made, how many throws get away from the fielder, the receiver, and just watch how many balls are rolling along the ground when they're just simply throwing and catching. And there's no stress or tension or fear or frustration or fatigue or anything. They're just calmly warming up, and yet they still have an inability to throw and catch very well. We ask them these questions, and so you need to get a little bit deeper into it and not just can you throw and catch. Many of them have never even thought about the fact, and probably many of you have never even thought about the fact, why do you throw? If we're going to teach people to throw, we need to know why you throw. There could be several reasons. One of the obvious reasons for throwing is to get an out. Another reason for throwing is to keep someone from advancing from one place to another. You've got a runner coming around first and you want to make sure they don't get to second, so you throw the ball to second. A third reason for throwing is just to get a ball from one place to another. A pitcher throws a ball to a hitter, the catcher's got to get it back to the pitcher. An umpire may have to throw a ball to the pitcher. An infielder throws a ball to the pitcher just to get it there or whatever. So three of the main reasons, and there could be others if we dig deeply into it: get an out, prevent someone from advancing, or just get a ball back to somewhere it needs to be. Now, we need to know why we're throwing so that we can teach throwing. What we're going to find out is that throwing is situational. If you ask a player what's the right way to throw, most of the time they will tell you overhanded, because we have harped and harped and harped on the fact that you've got to throw overhanded. I'll even have people at clinics sometimes ask me, how do I keep my daughter from throwing sidearm? And I'll say, what position does she play? Oh, second, short, third, whatever. I say, well, why would you want to keep her from throwing sidearm? There are times the sidearm throw is an appropriate throw. We've got to learn how to throw various types of ways, and we'll talk about those and get into these a little bit later as we get into the video. Softball defense is a game of throw and catch, but we've got to know why you throw before we teach how you throw. There are also factors of when to throw and where to throw, but those are strategy. Those are issues for a different video, and we have covered that in a number of higher ground videos. We'll talk mostly today about the why to throw and the how to throw. Now, before we get totally into that, we would ask players again, what are the critical factors in throwing? What are the things you think about that are important when you do throw? The first one they'll probably mention to us is accuracy. If we're going to throw a ball to get somebody out or prevent somebody from going somewhere or to get a ball from one place to another, we've got to throw it accurately. So accuracy is a critical part of throwing. Arm strength the velocity with which you're able to generate the throw. That is a critical factor. And then we get into the mechanics. Everybody talks about where does the wrist go and what's the arm doing, the elbows and the knees and the feet and all of those kind of things. And we'll explore that, of course, today. So those are the three things that people will typically mention: accuracy, arm strength, and mechanics. I had a wise man that I worked for with the Kansas City Royals years ago, went far in Major League Baseball as an executive, general manager, vice president of operations, and all of these kind of things. A guy named Sid Thrift. He wrote an excellent book, and in that book he said that baseball, let's transfer that to softball, is a game of space and time. And that's a critical part of what we've got to look at. Because if you just look at accuracy, arm strength, velocity, if you want to call it that, and mechanics, you leave out one of the critical, probably the most critical factor, and this is why throwing is taught improperly many times, or incompletely, if I want to use that word instead, is because we leave out the word time. Let's imagine a situation here, and I'll give you what Sid is talking about. An infielder is fielding a ground ball from the hitter. The hitter hits a ground ball to the shortstop, for example. The hitter is now going to run to first base. The shortstop's going to field the ball and throw to first base. If the ball gets there first, we've got an out. If the runner gets there first, we got a safe. Here's what's happening. The ball is covering a space from home plate to the shortstop. It then covers a space from the shortstop to first base. During that same time that Sid Thrift talked about, the hitter is covering a space from home plate to first base. Let's get a little mathematical for you here. If home plate is point A, the ball rolls from A to the shortstop, we'll call point B. The shortstop then throws it to first base, which we'll call point C. Meanwhile, the runner, the batter runner, is running from home plate A to first base C. So we've got a race. Softball is basically a race between a person, the runner, and a ball. The runner is going from A to C, and the ball is going from A to B and then B to C. So what we're trying to do is to get the time it takes the ball to go from A to B and B to C to be less than the time it takes the batter runner to go from A to C. If we can accomplish that, we get outs. If you flip that out into the outfield or wherever else, we're doing the same kind of thing to prevent somebody from getting somewhere. Now, if an umpire or catcher just flips the ball back to the pitcher, there's really no race. You got all the time you want, within reason, to get the ball back. But if we're trying to get an out or prevent someone from advancing, two of the reasons we said you need to throw to start with, then time is a critical factor. And so you would commonly think, from a mathematical standpoint, if we can cut the time it takes the ball to go from A to C, from A to B, by having a fielder charge the ball, then we've lessened the time of getting to throw to first base, the total time. But that's not necessarily true, because if you charge too much, you're out of control and you take too long to throw the ball. We also think that if the shortstop throws the ball with more velocity to first base, in other words, if it takes less time for the BC distance to be covered, we'd think the total would be less. That again is not necessarily true, because if you take a lot of time to throw the ball with velocity, then it may get there in a greater amount of time than if you just got rid of the ball. So it's not purely mathematical. If you lessen or decrease AB, you may not decrease the total of AB plus BC. If you decrease the total of the factor of BC, you still may not decrease the total. We're looking at the total time, and the big factor here, keep this in mind, is just B all by itself. So what we're really trying to do is decrease the total time of AB, the ball getting to the shortstop, plus B, how long the shortstop keeps it, plus BC, how long it takes to get from the shortstop once she throws it to first base. Be sure that you remember the sole factor, B. It's critical. We've been told that softball is different because there is no clock in it. We play by innings, not clocks. Basketball, soccer, football, hockey have clocks. Softball also has a clock. If the batter runner can run from home to first base in 3 seconds, there's a 3-second clock when she hits a ground ball to an infielder. If a runner trying to score from second is running home on a single to left field and can do that in 5.4 seconds or whatever the time might be, 6.2, you throw out the number, I don't care. If when the ball is hit, then the outfielder is operating on a 5.4 or 6.2 second clock. Remember, softball defense is a game of space and time. The clock is ticking. It's a race between a runner and a ball. And as we explore throwing today, we're going to come back to the philosophical foundation time after time after time after time. Our job is to get a ball to a place in time. Now let's look at how we do that.